Good evening from New York. I'm Dan Rather. Tonight, my thoughts on the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, and the companies that profited from the gun. But we begin with a new era in America's history. Criminal charges documenting for the first time a coordinated, aggressive campaign to undermine nothing less than our democracy itself. For all the speculation so far about Russian involvement in the 2016 campaign, the first edges of the truth are now concrete and real, following Friday's indictment of Russian individuals and organizations. The charges revolve around their alleged attempts to hide their nationality. In other words, they broke the law by staying secret while committing otherwise legal political activities that were intended to be public, very public. Creating Facebook groups, organizing political rallies, paying Americans to commit stunts portraying Hillary Clinton as a criminal. President Trump has spent the last 3 days arguing that the facts in the indictment exonerate him. The indictment, after all, says the main goal of those Russians was bigger than Trump and predated his campaign. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein confirmed that, yes, the Russians' real target was nothing short of America's political system itself.
The indictment charges 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for committing federal crimes while seeking to interfere in the United States political system, including the 2016 presidential election. The defendants allegedly conducted what they called information warfare against the United States, with the stated goal of spreading distrust towards the candidates and the political system in general.
What the president fails to see or acknowledge, what the Russians saw all too well, was that the best way to spread distrust in America's political system was to elect Donald Trump as president. The White House responded on Saturday by spreading distrust in America's political system.
There are 2 groups that have created chaos more than the Russians, and that's the Democrats and the mainstream media.
The White House wants you to blame the media, and it's fair to point the finger at your TV for its election coverage, ignoring Bernie Sanders and his policy prescriptions, obsessing over Democratic Party emails and Hillary Clinton's handling of her emails. But it vindicates the Russians' judgment of Mr. Trump when he dispatches a mouthpiece out to assert on national TV that focusing on Russia's deeds is worse than Russia's deeds, worse than trying to keep black Americans from voting, worse than deceiving Americans in the sacred ritual of choosing a president, worse than identity theft. Identity theft, metaphorically speaking, the most terrible of these crimes, the most effective way of undermining America itself. They stole their identities in order to steal ours, pretending to be American, in order to make us un-American. They will try again. Their accomplices, knowing and otherwise, in politics, media, and online, will assist them legally, fomenting chaos, extremism, distrust. The law cannot stop them. The only way to stop them is to remember who we are, to reclaim our identity. I want to talk about who we are when it comes to guns and our children right after this.
Hey, Dave. As you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crash.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
Look, we're doing interviews over there at youtube.com/TYT interviews. and we've done some amazing ones recently.
So now, of course, you know the person most widely considered to be the most progressive senator is Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Why not back him during the 2016 primaries?
Why be a Democrat at all? And we're in a time where you cannot, in good conscience, sit on the sidelines of history.
In 1947, a modest book called The Everglades River of Grass was published. It was a call to protect a national treasure for our future by changing how we saw things. At the time, the Everglades was seen as just a swamp. River of Grass inspired future generations to protect this national treasure by changing how we saw it. The author of River of Grass was Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and today, students at the high school that bears her name in Parkland, Florida, have begun the generational work of protecting our future by transforming how we see things. Today, America's children are responding to last week's shooting at that high school by participating in their democracy, making signs, taking to the streets, speaking out. The president responded over the weekend with a series of tweets, a blizzard of tweets really, bizarre even for him, blaming the Russia investigation for the FBI not stopping the shooting. One Parkland survivor called the president's FBI tweet, quote, disgusting. The children of Parkland today are showing us all how Americans are supposed to respond to fear with bravery, optimism, and resolve, with a commitment to make America better. Because America is not the only land with guns or mental illness or violent media. The only thing other nations don't have is us. What they don't have is this.
The calls you're hearing today for gun control have nothing to do with protecting Americans from violence. What you're witnessing is a kind of class war. The left hates rural America, red America, gun-owning America, the America that elected Donald Trump. They hate them. Progressives are still in charge of most of the major institutions in this country, and they despise the autonomy of an armed population. They want collective punishment for the sins of a few. They seek to obliterate a core constitutional right rather than trying to mitigate its downsides. They call it gun control, but it's not. It's people control. For the left, voters who can't be controlled can't be trusted.
Imagine seeing your own country that way. Well, I was born in rural America. I live in New York and Texas. I can remember when red America, gun-owning America, belonged to unions and voted Democratic. Things change, but America is not filled with people, left or right, who despise each other. At our best, we do not seek to punish anyone. Being American means we are supposed to aspire to something better, to be the home of the brave. We like to call ourselves the best country on earth, and in many ways we are. We like to say how we have a can-do spirit to conquer challenges. But all that self-congratulatory rhetoric rings pretty damn hollow at times like this. It takes bravery to see that we are safer without guns than with them, to stop fearing one another and our own government, to see Washington as more than a swamp, brave enough to trust that red states are not deplorables and blue states do not lust for control. We are capable of this, I know. Republican gun supporters are even now calling for the government they once feared to at least study gun violence again. The president reportedly is open to at least tougher background checks, if nothing else. If we are capable of such small steps on our own, it's not absurd to think that we can extend that trust to each other, to hope that this generation, still in school, can show us the way forward, to change the way we see each other, because faith in our children is not folly. They are, after all, the children of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And in 1947, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas inspired future generations to protect a national treasure by changing how we see things. Now, I want to talk about the money behind our guns and the men behind the money right after this.
I know what you're thinking.
I love how you do something with your lips when you play the sound clips.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Look at his lips.
I was a woman.
No, you're closing your mouth. Usually I'll be like, and I'm like, is he like lip syncing it?
I don't know. I never noticed it until you said it.
It's a funny habit.
It's not human intelligence!
TYT member.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.
Look, we're doing interviews over there at youtube.com/TYT interviews, and we've done some amazing ones recently.
So now, of course, you know that the person most widely considered to be the most progressive senator is Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Why not back him during the 2016 primaries?
Why be a Democrat at all? And we're in a time where you cannot, in good conscience, sit on the sidelines of history in 2017.
Right. It's easy to go after the National Rifle Association when these shootings happen. In fact, it's supposed to be easy. The purpose of the NRA is to absorb whatever verbal or political punishment people dish out, while the gun makers themselves continue to profit off the bloodshed. The NRA is a lightning rod, drawing our attention away from the companies and the human beings who make these weapons, who advertise these weapons, and who sell these weapons. The gun used in last week's shooting in Parkland, Florida, was a semi-automatic rifle manufactured by Smith & Wesson. But Smith & Wesson doesn't exist as a company anymore. The name became a lightning rod, and the company changed its name to American Outdoor Brands. American Outdoor Brands is headquartered in Massachusetts, and the CEO is this man, one James Debney. The NRA in 2013 thanked him for his company's $1 million in donations. Debney responded by thanking the NRA and explaining how necessary it was at the time because, quote, the whole Second Amendment is under attack as we speak.
I think it's important for everybody to step up and support the NRA. They are our voice. They're a single voice out there. They're a united voice, and they represent so many people and interested parties that I think it's particularly important. The whole Second Amendment is under attack as we speak at this very moment in time. So I would say to everybody out there, step up and join us.
Now you may want to note this. Telling people that President Obama was coming for their guns inspired gun owners to buy more guns. That came to a crashing end, however, with the election of Donald Trump. No one thinks President Trump will do anything about guns, so gun owners no longer feel the need to stock up, which sent gun stocks down. American Outdoor Brands profits dropped 90%. As Debney said in December, quote, there is no fear-based buying right now, unquote. But there is buying. The largest single shareholder of American Outdoor Brands is the BlackRock hedge fund. And BlackRock has been buying up American Outdoor Brands stock on the cheap. In fact, BlackRock is now the single largest owner of gunmaker stocks. The CEO of BlackRock is this man, Larry Fink. Last month, Fink made headlines with a letter telling CEOs their companies should serve a social purpose. He stopped short, however, of telling them to stop making products that are dangerous in and of themselves.
How about Coca-Cola? You tell them no more sugary drinks.
We were not. That's their business. Their business is providing.
Okay, how about Philip Morris? How about Philip Morris? No more tobacco products.
But we will not do that either.
Last week, the historic rifle maker Remington said it was filing for bankruptcy. Remington made the gun that was used to kill 26 children at Sandy Hook. How ironic it would be if gun companies are forced out of business by men who helped elect a president who made gun owners feel safe enough to stop buying guns. But first, we have to stop shoring up these companies by investing in them. Because if Congress will not act, a new generation will turn its attention to the companies that control the money and the men who control the companies. There's a new kind of storm rising in Parkland and all around the country. And lightning rods do not stand forever. I want to share some questions I still have about what comes next for Parkland and for us. I'll get to that in just a moment.
Do you trust the establishment media?
The United States economy has never been better. Monetary policy is spectacular.
Everybody thought Jamie Dimon was the king of Wall Street last week. Well, it might be Ken Lewis now. He takes the crown. The best sales force out there is Merrill Lynch, and now it goes to BofA. It's pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing. Lewis now. Buying opportunity.
I do think this is a buying opportunity. We're going to see a stabilization and just a tremendous snapback.
The rally will be jaw-dropping.
The Occupy Wall Street movement is not a spontaneous protest against economic inequality.
This is what we mean by the establishment press.
It is a well-thought-out campaign.
To bring down the infrastructure of this country.
The embarrassment is that I'm given credibility in this world because of the disappointment that the public has in what the news media does.
I'm the former chairman of the Veterans Committee, and I've learned a little bit about the cost of war. What the president is trying to do, and I agree with him, is to do everything that we can without going to war.
So what do you say to your critics? I'm talking about Democratic critics who say, you know what, he's really just a socialist pacifist.
I very rarely read in any coverage of Bernie that he's a socialist.
Bernie Sanders is a socialist, for God's sake.
Most analysts are saying that Hillary Clinton's going to win in a landslide.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
We've got Trump at 279, 259.
Wait a minute. I know you don't believe that. We're not going to be polite anymore. You know what we're going to do? We're going to fight back.
Fight for a free and independent media. We're done with politeness. We fight back.
That 300 million is a pretty good number. We were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
No, that's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
People looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views.
They said you couldn't do it, you can't change the media, don't try. Well, here we are, we're changing the media. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Here's some other stories we're keeping an eye on and think you should. Despite the chill of the Winter Olympics, tensions are running hot between the Korean Peninsula and the United States. North Korea's state-run media said Monday that the country is, and I quote, fully ready for both dialogue and war, and prepared to respond to any U.S. provocation by prompt counter-strike. The 2018 Winter Games have sparked renewed relations between North and South Korea. Kim Yo-jong, the only sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, served as emissary to deliver an offer to host a summit with South Korean President Moon Jae-in. Although it's unclear how effective this charm offensive will be, there's already criticism that the United States will undermine efforts for inter-Korean relations. All this leaves the South Korean president walking a fine line between improved North-South ties and demands from the White House. The Bering Sea off Alaska's coast lost 1/3 of its ice over little more than a week earlier this month. This in the dead of winter, when the Arctic ice is supposed to be growing. Inside Climate News reports that at the current rate, the Arctic will finish out the winter with the 4th year in a row of record low sea ice. The Orange County Register reports that USA Swimming, that's the governing body for competitive swimming in the United States, covered up sexual abuse by hundreds of coaches and others. Now, this is swimming, not gymnastics. The victims, underage swimmers, abused in the hundreds over the past 2 decades. The newspaper's report says that USA Swimming flagged coaches and officials who had been accused, but allowed them to keep working. USA Swimming has so far not responded to the Register's report. At least 22 children died last week from the flu. The worst flu season in a decade has now killed 84 children in America, and it's not over yet. Studies indicate that states requiring private employers to grant paid sick leave have fewer rates of flu transmission. And companies that offer paid sick leave can, in effect, make up the costs by preventing other workers from getting the flu or otherwise sickness. Puerto Rico's Governor Ricardo Rossello tells BuzzFeed News that this week his government will lay out a new process for counting the dead from Hurricane Maria. The official death toll stands at 64, but funeral directors and others have been telling media the true numbers are far higher. Nearly 250,000 utility customers there still have no power, a number that multiplies significantly when you consider that one customer can represent an entire household of residents in the longest blackout in American history. The New York Times reports that a company owned by a friend of the First Lady received $26 million for its work on the inauguration. The money came from corporations and wealthy donors who donated to the Trump inauguration. The Times reports that the company was created in December of 2016, 1 month after Trump's election and 6 weeks before the inauguration. And finally tonight, last week in one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history, an armed teenage gunman killed 17 people and wounded 14 more in a high school. Sadness and despair, those were my first reactions to last week's shooting. But then quickly, I became hopping mad. What happened in that Florida school is not okay. This is not normal. We are better than this. Our children should be able to go to school and be safe. If the desire to keep our children safe is universal, then why is it so difficult to build a consensus around how to protect them? So many questions remain in the wake of this tragedy. Will this time be different? Or will the energy channeled into the cause today peter out? Will the Parkland survivors be the only ones to organize marches in the streets? Or will others follow their lead? Will a silent majority of Americans rise up and confront those who offer bromides in the face of bloodshed and excuses in the face of the inexcusable? Will there be a new movement of parents, teachers, and children, especially children, arguing that our schools not be a place for Russian roulette? And if such a movement does materialize, and if it does last, what might the elected officials bolstered and sometimes paid for by the NRA say? Will the response still be, there's nothing we can do? Will they continue to say, now is not the time to politicize this issue? And if there is a groundswell of activists this time, and the answers they get are the same ones they always get, will the response be loud enough to finally force change? Will there be retribution at the ballot box? I ask myself, when did all this become the American way? When it comes to our children's safety, we can't just throw up our hands. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. Feeling sadness, despair, or anger isn't enough either. We like to call ourselves the best country on earth, and in many ways we are. We like to say how we have a can-do spirit to conquer challenges. But all that self-congratulatory rhetoric rings, as I said before, pretty damn hollow on days like these. Anyone who says now isn't the time to talk about gun violence, anyone who says there's nothing we can do, anyone who offers up only thoughts and prayers, is saying that they can't be bothered with the hard work of trying to keep America's children safe. Shame on them and shame on us. We should be looking to the survivors at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School for strength in times like these. Today, these young people remind us to be resolute in the days and weeks and months ahead as we stand together and demand change. With that, I leave you for this news cycle. The Young Turks is next, and we'll be back with the news at this same place and time, 5:30 Eastern every Monday. Until then, Dan Rather reporting. Stay steady.